Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and notification bell and you'll always know when we're posting new content. So today is going to be a little bit more of an involved project. Hopefully you guys have been waiting for this. We are going to learn how to bezel around a beautiful little Swarovski crystal Rivoli. This is a 12 millimeter Rivoli, and the color is Purple Haze, which is one of my favorites. It's just super iridescent. It goes with a lot of different colors of seed beads, so it's a really versatile Rivoli. You have a lot of blues and purples and even olives and browns and taupes in there. It's just really a stunning, stunning Rivoli. So I'm going to show you the different steps to do a peyote bezel around this stone. So to start off, I have my 6-pound Fireline. I have my trusty beater's wax, which as you can see is very, very well loved. I have my 12 millimeter Rivoli. And then I have a few different seed beads. So to start, I have my size 11 Delicas. I have my size 15 seed beads. These are Toho. And then I have my size 15 Czech Charlottes. These are smaller than a regular size 15 seed bead. You really will need all three different sizes of these to do the bezel. You can sometimes get away without the Charlotte, but it really adds a finishing touch and it really helps to pull in the bezel, that last little bit that you need, so I recommend it. Then of course I just have my shears for cutting my Fireline. I've gone ahead and threaded up a couple of feet of Fireline, and I've pulled a tail and I've waxed it, so I'm ready to go there. Now the bead count for a 12 millimeter Rivoli is 30 Delicas. So I'm gonna go ahead and load those up. Okay, so I've gone ahead and loaded on 30 Delicas, and you're gonna wanna make sure that you double check that count because you would hate to get a few steps into the project and realize that you were off by a bead or so. So we're going to go ahead and bring the beads to within a few inches of the end of your Fireline. You're going to want to leave a tail that's long enough that you could weave it in later at the end of the project. Now, depending on how complex the project is, so you might be thinking, well, I want to end up doing even more embellishments around the Rivoli. I want to do a really complicated, large decorative veil. This video is just for a basic bezel, but if you knew that you were going to want to do a bit more, then you're going to want to leave this tail a bit longer, and then you can just stick a needle on it later and utilize it as well. But in this case, we're just doing a simple bezel. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this into a square knot. So right over left, and then left over right, and then I like to pull them down together. Just like that. I'm just going to move these out of the way. And then before I start my actual peyote, I'm also going to go ahead and bead through a few of the next Delicas, just to pull my knot into the beadwork a little bit. So we have our little beaded loop to start here. Now I'm going to start my peyote. Now we do have a video on doing circular or tubular even count peyote, so you can certainly go back and check that out if you want to see this in a little bit more detail. But the basic gist of it is you pick up a new Delica and then you skip over the next Delica after the one you're coming out of, and you go into the one after that. So if you're coming out of Delica 1, you're skipping over Delica 2 and going into Delica 3. So this way the new Delica you picked up sits next to the Delica that you skipped over. And now I'm just going to keep doing that around my circle. So I picked up, oops, and dropped. I picked up another new Delica. Again, if I'm coming out of Delica 1, I'm skipping over Delica 2, going into Delica 3. And what we do, or what we get when we do this, is we get what I call up beads. So we have the beads that are sort of sticking up on the outer and inner part of our circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and get almost all the way around, and I'll join you back in a minute. Okay, so I've almost finished the round of peyote, but I wanted to show you the step up. Now, a step up in any bead stitch is the final step of a row that finishes the row you're starting on, and it sets you up to start the next row. Not all stitches have one, but even count tubular peyote does have one. So I have picked up the Delica that I need, And I'm just going to go ahead and go into the bead that I normally would. So again, if I'm coming out of bead 1, I'm skipping over bead 2, going into bead 3, and then I'm going to angle and go right into the first up bead on my inner part of the circle. Okay, so you'll go through 2 beads at once. The one that you normally would have gone through for the sake of the peyote, and then the up bead in the center of your circle. And when you pull nice and tight, you have your little peyote ring. Now, I like to work my peyote for my bezels now in the center. Not everyone does this. There's a few different ways that you can, of course, skin a cat. So this is just the way that I prefer to do it. So the next bead that I'm going to utilize is going to be my 15, my regular 15 seed bead. And I'm going to do a row of peyote inside this ring using those smaller beads, those 15s, and that's going to pull this ring in and help to shrink it in. This is going to create a little seat for our Rivoli. So I'm going to start by picking up my 15, and I'm going to go into the next up bead. And the little space that's in between those 2 up beads is where my size 15 will sit, just like that. So I'm going to show you another one before we break again. So I picked up my 15. I'm going to go into the next up bead. This is sometimes called stitch in the ditch. And you can see it starts to pull them in. So I'm going to go ahead and go around that circle, and I'll see you back in a sec. Okay, so I've gotten almost all of the way around. You can see how it kind of pulled in, and I have one last space for my little 15 here, my last 15, and again, we do a step up. So I go into the bead that I normally would go into, which would be that Delica bead, just like that, except I'm also going to angle and go into that size 15 bead, just like that. I'm going to pull this all the way down, pop that bead into place, and then that's what we have here. Now we're going to do another round of peyote, but this time we're going to use those size 15 Charlottes. And like I said earlier, the size 15 Charlottes are a little smaller than the size 15 regular Japanese seed beads that we're using. The size 15s I'm using now, the Charlottes, these are Czech. These are not Japanese. And they are super itty bitty teeny. Let's see if I can get that into focus. They're super tiny. So I'm going to do a round of peyote with this, and it's going to pull them in even further. So what happens when you do tubular peyote and you don't decrease the size of the bead is you make a tube basically, and it'll just keep making a cylinder. But in this case, using these smaller sizes pulls it in and helps us make that seat for our Rivoli to sit on. So I'm going to do a few of these so you can see what this looks like. And you'll also be able to see a nice size comparison of the Czech 15s with the Japanese 15s. And the Czech 15s are Charlottes, which means they have one single facet on them as well. So they do add a nice little sparkle. So this is what we have here now. You can see that the Czech 15s are pulling in the Japanese 15s. They are a little smaller. And so I'm just going to continue the peyote around my circle here, and I'll meet you back in a sec. Okay, so you can see that I finished up my round with the Czech 15 Charlottes. And now what I have to do is I'm going to have to weave my way to the outer row here because we're done with the beading in the center. So all I'm going to do is travel through my peyote just to get to that outer edge. You always travel through peyote diagonally. We just want to come out of an up bead in our outer circle. Okay, so now the next step is I'm going to do a round of peyote on this outer circle now, on this top here, and I'm going to be doing one round with Delicas. So let me get some of those out. Okay, so just like the peyote I've been doing, I'm coming out of an up bead, I'm going to pick up my Delica, and I'm going to go into the next up bead. And peyote, once you get beyond that first row, is so much easier because your needle just always will know to go through the next up bead. So again, I picked up another Delica here, and I'm going to go right through the next up bead, just like this. And I like to just kind of place my thumb right sort of in this little round shape of the bezel as it's forming. That keeps me from pulling too tight. And again, I just keep going around with my peyote. You want to pull just enough to bring the bead down and into place. You don't want to pull crazy tight here. Sometimes tight tension is not best, so as you grow as a beader, you'll learn that sometimes you want to back off with tension and sometimes you want tight tension. So in this case, we just want to pull just enough to get that bead out. And you can see how we're growing up that wall there. We're building up that wall. So I'm going to go around to the other side and meet back with you in a minute. Okay, so now we're at the point of our step up. So you can see that we have a little space for one more delica, and then we're going to head right on up into the next up bead. That starts us off for our next row. So I'll bring this down, pop it right into place, and now we're already set up to do our next row. Now our next row is going to be with 15s, the Japanese 15s, so my little teal colored 15s. I'm putting the delicas back in the wrong tray, but that's okay. Now, the only difference with this is that halfway through going around, we're then going to place the Rivoli into our little bezel here, and we'll start to pull much tighter to really start to encase it in. So I'm going to start with my little teal colored Japanese 15s here. And again, now we can pull just a little tighter to start to pull our beadwork in. We'll pull really tight once we're actually setting that Rivoli in, but for now we can just start to pull a little bit tighter. Keep that tail out of the way. At any point you can go ahead and weave that tail in if you'd like. You don't have to wait till the end. Okay, you can see our 15s being set up into there. You'll develop a nice little rhythm. If you've never done peyote before, you'll get what I mean. Peyote is very much, I feel like it's the knitting of the bead world. It's just very simple, very clean, very rhythmic. So now we're going to pick up our lovely Purple Haze 12mm Rivoli here. We're just going to sit it right in there, just like this, and we're going to start to pull this tighter. Did you see that? It just started to pull in all the beadwork, and that's what's going to keep our Rivoli in place. So now we're going to hold that stone in there as we finish up this round with the 15s. And we're going to pull a little tighter than we have been each time we pull a bead down now. Nice good tug. Okay, almost at the end. Now we're going to be doing our step up. So you can see our Rivoli is nicely encased in our bezel here, and we now are ready to do our step up with our last 15. Head right on into that delica and then right on into the 15. That is our step up. There we go, get in focus. There we go. Give it a nice good tug. And now we're going to do our last row, which is going to be with our 15 Charlottes. And again, this will not only add a really lovely metallic touch to the end, but it'll really hold that Rivoli in nicely. So just like the peyote we've been doing, I'm going to head right on into my next little up bead here, just like that. This is going to pull right down into place. So I'm going to go ahead and do my peyote around with my Charlottes, and I'll see you back in a minute. Okay folks, here is our finished bezel. I am going to show you how to add a little loop onto this so you could make this into a great little earring if you wanted, or a pendant. This is what the back looks like. Nice and clean. We don't see any threads other than my working thread that's still there. Look at that, just absolutely stunning. Nice clean peyote. Now, if you've never done a Rivoli bezel before and you try this, I guarantee you're going to become addicted. These are so much fun to do. They become so mindless. They're absolutely beautiful if you do a bunch of them and you link them together, but I'm going to show you now how to do a little bit of a seed beaded loop here. So after I finished my row with my 15s, I just navigated up to a delica that's sort of coming out along that outer, just that most outer ridge. And I'm just going to do a little loop. Now I'm going to use my check 15s because I like the idea of a little metallic bead sort of blending into the metallic look of an ear wire. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of these. I'm going to do 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm just going to go back into, loop back into the delica that I'm already coming out of. And you're going to get a nice little beaded loop here, just like that. And you can go ahead and loop back into the seed beads in this loop just to reinforce them, because after all this work, why not take an extra moment to really make sure that every part of this is made well and is nice and strong. Just like that. Nice little seed bead loop there. And then we're just going to weave out our thread and then we're all done. And if you've never woven out a thread before, it's very easy. You're just going to have to weave out your thread through your beadwork a bit, and then now and then you're going to catch your thread or catch your needle underneath some thread in between the beads and tie a little overhand knot. So I'm just going to reach in there just like that. I'm actually caught underneath a thread right now. Pull down, and then you just go through this loop like that and just close the knot right where your thread was coming out of the bead. So just going to go ahead and weave a little bit more, do another overhand knot, weave a little bit more, and then you'll be able to snip off your thread and you're all set. Just like that. So I hope you loved this one. Look for more fun video tutorials coming soon. We film several times a week. And thanks for watching. Make sure to go ahead and visit us at EurekaCrystalBeads.com for all the materials used in this video. We will link them to you below, as well as any of your other beading and jewelry needs that you may find on our website. And if you think that you might love doing this, or if you try it and you get absolutely hooked, we have an enormous selection of Swarovski Rivolis in all different sizes. This again was a 12mm Rivoli. We'll link you to that below. But the possibilities are endless as far as color combinations. So hopefully you get hooked on this just like I did. Bye guys.